What's up, fellas? Let's freaking go. We're only like 5 weeks out from football season. I'm fired up because I'm getting in the spirit of it. It's the dog days of summer, but we got the most exciting college football season possibly ever coming in 5 weeks. We're here for Wake Up Mintzy. I'm chugging some Stella Blue coffee. It's the only way to get your day started. Shout out Big Cat. Check out the blueberry and all the cold brew. It's amazing in the hot summertime. Amazing brand of coffee, Stella Blue. As always, Wake Up Mintzy, sponsored by Dude Wipes, taking over the toilet paper world. It's a revolution. Find them at Amazon, Target, Walmart, and all over the World Wide Web. Some stuff to shout out real quick. Thanks to Taylor McGregor, the Cubs reporter, for coming in yesterday. Had an awesome time with her. We got a lot of great feedback on that. She kind of also does a lot of college football stuff, so got us in the spirit. She does at ESPN and SEC Network. We've got Walker Jones, head of the Ole Miss Grove Collective, joining us today. The NIL crew that's kind of revolutionized the new college football world. 12-team playoff this fall. Most exciting Ole Miss football season in the history of the school. Damn. It feels good to say that. Walker, good morning. How are you? Can you hear me? All right. Walker's looking at me. I don't know if he realizes I'm talking. I want to hit on some Barstool stuff here first. Tonight, watch party at River North. The Chris Clemmer's Rat Race coming out on Thursday at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. But tonight, you can join all of our crew. Huge turnout tonight. Should be a lot of fun. Starts at 7. We've got a meet and greet at the bar in Chicago. 7:30, we'll be debuting the new Rat Race. It's out tomorrow, 9 a.m. Super excited about that. So come see us at Stool River North. All right, we're now joined by Walker. We got you? Can you hear me? Nope. Some other Barstool stuff to get to while Walker's looking at me, but I can't. I'm not hearing him talking. Some other Barstool stuff to get to. I want to mention, shout out Jersey Jerry last night. He tore it up with his golf stream. Jerry After Dark, still a massive, massive hit. He parred all the holes with different clubs. It was wild. I mean, he hit 3-woods, putters, all that for pars. Good turnout on that stream. Last night, as always, Jerry does a hell of a job. Coach Doug's and Big Cat tearing it up as well. Big Cat had a little bit of a tough start with Coach Doug's Washington State, but it seems like he's turned it around. Had a big win last night over Oregon, who was number 1. Walker, we got you? Talk. Can you hear me? Talk. Barstool stuff, as always. Hot as usual. We got a big commercial tomorrow with DraftKings. Going to be taping that. Excited for that. This Ole Miss season, though. The Ole Miss season this fall, biggest one ever. Can't be more excited for it. I mean, over under is 9.5 wins. Crazy. Most hyped I've ever seen the season. Coming off an 11-win season last year, 2 of the last 3 years, winning over 10 games, and just crazy momentum under Lane Kiffin. Just nuts, to be honest. It's most fired up. Ole Miss already sold out their season tickets. College football switching to a 12-team playoff, and never seen a school really more all in than Ole Miss this year. Going into
hello.
What's up, Walker? We got you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? We got you. Walker Jones joining us, the Grove Collective. I can hear him. I don't know if he can hear. Hey, what's up, Walker? How are you? What's up? Okay. But going into the season, though, Ole Miss going 11-2 last year. Never just seen anything like the hype for it. I mean, when you're talking about, 2 of the last 3 years winning 10 games, and then college football switching to a 12-team playoff this year, it's crazy how different college football is going to be. 12-team playoff. Not sure like how different it's going to be, but it's going to be so much freaking fun, and that's what I can't wait for. It's just going to be nuts. I don't know how else to put it, but look at the last few years. So Lane Kiffin got to Ole Miss 2020. Look, I got lucky to be a big part of it for sure, and I got hired off the Kentucky touchdown. When Ole Miss Kentucky missed an extra point in overtime, and then Elijah Moore scoring a touchdown. Lane's brought a new exciting brand of football to Oxford, and everybody said, will Lane Kiffin stay around a long time? Will he stay around 5 years? And he has been around. He's here, and the recruiting's taken off. The Grove Collective has been huge, and now all of a sudden the hype is just massive. I don't know how it could be any more big or anything going into this year. And then when you look at the 12-team playoff thing, it's crazy. Walker, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Going into this year, though, Ole Miss going in over under 9.5 wins on DraftKings. Never seen higher over under. I'm doing a big SEC preview situation right now where I'm doing 16 teams in 16 days. Did Alabama on Monday. Did Auburn yesterday, and that blog will be out in a minute. But just never been more pumped than I am for this Ole Miss season. And when you look at the schedule going in, it's a different world now. They changed it up. You got Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC, and so now switching to 16 teams, it's going to be really weird, not playing Auburn, not playing Alabama. Ole Miss kept LSU and Mississippi State and Arkansas as their 3 traditional games, but the schedule sets up really good for the Rebels to possibly win 10 games. And with the over-under of 9.5, just couldn't be more excited. I think Ole Miss can win 10. And when you look at this roster going in this year, Jackson Dart, third-year starting quarterback, tons of experience there. Ole Miss beefed up the offensive line, just spending like crazy in the transfer portal. It just is – the Grove Collective has raised so much money, and Ole Miss has done such a good job working with the school. And it's cool to see just that kind of enthusiasm. And they beefed up the offensive line. You take Walter Nolan, the number 1 defensive tackle in the portal, and – from Texas A&M, paid him God knows how much money. You got Pooh Paul, the number 1 linebacker from Arkansas. Juice Wells, the number 1 wide receiver from South Carolina. You got loaded wide receiver core, great tight end, beefed up offensive line, 3-year starting quarterback. The defensive line, most talented. That was the big thing with Ole Miss going in was the fact that they weren't big enough at the line of scrimmage, and now they fixed that. And, last year after the Georgia game, there was a big meeting after they got blown out 52-17 by Georgia. Lane Kiffin and Walker had a big meeting about beefing up the line of scrimmage, and fortunately they were able to do it. Walker, can you hear me? No. Something's wrong on his end because I can hear him. I can hear him for sure. But going into this year, the enthusiasm, just so much. And when you look at the schedule in September, 4 pretty big cakewalk games in September, opening with Furman, Middle Tennessee State, at Wake Forest. Should be and Georgia Southern should be 4-0 easily for Ole Miss when Kentucky comes in. And then it starts. I mean, it's going to be starts with Kentucky at home, then at South Carolina, at LSU. I'm excited about October 12th at LSU. That's going to be a night game in Death Valley. That one's going to be nuts. And then Ole Miss should be an underdog right now.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello?
what's up,
Hello?
Walker? What's up, Walker? We got you. I can hear you. You can't hear me? Okay, I don't know why we can't hear Walker. I can hear him and he can't hear me. I don't know why. But anyway, so Ole Miss this fall, big schedule. There should be 4-0 early. Should be no problem at all. And then the question is, can they go 6-2 in the SEC? Because if you win 10, you're going to get to the playoffs. Because this year with the 12-team playoff, 10-2 will be enough to get there. When you look around the whole scope of the SEC, it's kind of wide open. Georgia, 2-1 favorite on DraftKings, as they should be with Carson Beck, one of the Heisman Trophy favorites going into the year. But Georgia has tough road games at Texas, at Bama, at Ole Miss. Texas coming in this year at the SEC, such a huge part of the story. Texas plus 320 to win the SEC, coming off a playoff berth. And Ole Miss right behind them, 6-1, ahead of Alabama and LSU, which is crazy. Bama's situation is fascinating going into this year. When you got Kalen DeBoer taking over for Nick Saban, what's that going to look like in year one? And they got Jalen Milroe back at quarterback, whole new situation for the Tide. What's it going to be like following Nick Saban? I mean, you never want to follow a legend. And DeBoer, though, I mean, when you look at what he did at Washington last year, I mean, he took a team that was like top 25, top 30 preseason, almost won the national championship, got blown out by Michigan in the title game, was a solid hire by Bama. And, he's inheriting a quarterback in Milroe, but like a lot of change there. Got to expect Bama's defense to regress a little bit, but the offense should be good. Weird to see the expectations down with them. They're over under only 9.5 wins. And you take a look around, there's no longer SEC West and East. It's just totally different. It's the top two teams will play in the conference championship regardless of division. That's no more. Another big storyline is how will Oklahoma, do coming into the SEC. And when with Oklahoma's thing, it's going to be fascinating. Jackson Arnold, you got a 5-star quarterback, but man, I think they're in trouble with their schedule. They're over under 7.5 wins. Their offensive line, extremely, extremely young this year, and they've got just a murder road schedule. Oklahoma has to go to Ole Miss, to Missouri, to Auburn, to LSU, plays Texas in a, quote, home game in Dallas. I think that could be a little bit of a tough transition. Looking around at some other storylines in the SEC, what will Hugh Freeze year 2 look like at Auburn? Last year, they won 7 games, but everybody's going to remember Auburn last year for the 4th and 31, and rightfully so. I mean, how can you blow that against Alabama? I just still don't believe that happened. But having said that, Auburn, year 2, I was surprised they didn't get a transfer quarterback to replace Peyton Thorne, but they're going with him. Their offense was terrible last year, but they beefed up their offensive line. They got better weapons, hired DJ Durkin as defensive coordinator. I feel like Auburn still maybe a year away when looking at the SEC. The 2 hottest seats in the conference, no doubt, Billy Napier at Florida and Sam Pittman at Arkansas. Both those guys just need to have big years. Florida's over under only 4.5 wins this year, but I actually don't think they're that bad. When you look at the Florida Gators last year, they lost a bunch of close games, including a Missouri game where they allowed a 4th and 18 late. I thought Graham Mertz, quarterback transfer from Wisconsin, was a hell of a lot better maybe than I expected him to be last season. And the thing is, there's a lot of pressure on them. They've got Florida's last 5 games are against top 15 teams because they play Florida State non-conference. They play Georgia, Ole Miss, and just LSU, just super loaded. So not really sure, what if they make a bowl game. I think that's enough to save Napier's job. But there's a lot of talk that funding's getting pulled from Napier from big boosters. So will Florida ultimately be able to save his job? Tennessee's got a super hyped-up quarterback in Nico. I think their offense should be really good. Last year they took a step back under Joe Milton. But I think Josh Heupel runs a heck of an offense. They should be good. So, I mean, the SEC is just loaded, as it always is. And, it'll be interesting to see, how many teams can make the playoff from the SEC this year out of 12. I think 4 or 5 could. I think if you go 10-2 in the SEC, you're probably good to go. 9-3, maybe not. But 10-2 should be good to go. You look at the SEC and Big Ten just beefing up so much. Big Ten Media Day is going on. USC and UCLA in the Big Ten is going to take a hell of a lot of adjusting for me to get ready for. And God, that's just so weird to me. USC and UCLA going to play non-conference games. How the hell are they in the Big Ten? That's just so weird to me. It's so crazy. What are we going to see? USC at Wisconsin, conference games. USC, Wisconsin, conference games in November? Freaking crazy. I mean, that's going to be so wild. Just nuts. But who knows? But anyway, looking around the rest of the SEC, though, other stuff to get excited about. There's just so much. I mean, there's just the Oklahoma and Texas coming in. It's such a big storyline. I'm glad Texas and Texas A&M finally getting to play each other. They're coming back Thanksgiving night. And that, it just college football is all about the rivalries. And it just doesn't sit right for me when Texas A&M don't play. And so I'm glad to see they're playing again. That's going to be exciting. The Ole Miss Mississippi State Egg Bowl got pushed to Friday, Black Friday Egg Bowl, because of Texas A&M Thursday night. I'm thrilled about that personally, because I don't love the Egg Bowl being on Thanksgiving, to be honest. Not necessarily my favorite ever. But, the beat rolls on for the Rebels. Looking around the rest of college football, too. I've been getting in the spirit. I've been doing tons of research. Just getting super excited. Ohio State loaded this year under Ryan Day. They have got a big quarterback transfer, Will Howard from Kansas State. Ohio State hired Chip Kelly to be their offensive coordinator. I think that's such an amazing hire. Ryan Day at Big Ten Media Day says he trusts him with his life. Ohio State, one of the favorites in college football going in this year, easily and rightfully so. Michigan coming off their national championship, but feels like a little bit of a rebuild. Sherrod Moore taking over for Jim Harbaugh. And, they lost J.J. McCarthy to the Minnesota Vikings. And they lost their defensive coordinator. Michigan still has an elite defensive line, good defensive backs, but I still feel like they're going to take a little bit of a step back in the Big Ten. I'm not sure they're going to be able to make the playoff. Big Ten adding Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA. Oregon's the one to watch. Phil Knight, 86 years old, founder of Nike. Oregon's got an unlimited NIL budget this year. And with that, they went out and got Dylan Gabriel in the transfer portal. And getting Gabriel from Oklahoma should be one of the front runners for the Heisman. And the thing is, when you look at the transferring to the Big Ten, Oregon, even with them being a West Coast team, I think should be able to transfer better to the Big Ten because they've beefed up at the line of scrimmage. Like, I don't know how USC and UCLA will be able to do in the Big Ten because I don't know how tough USC is the line of scrimmage in those cold weather games in November. But Oregon under Dan Lanning has really emphasized both offensive and defensive line. And so I think, not just do they have the quarterback in Gabriel, they have elite guys at the wide receiver position, but they're also tougher in the trenches. And Oregon's the second favorite in the Big Ten. They're top 5 preseason as well. And I think Ohio State and Oregon look like playoff teams from the Big Ten. I'm not sure. Penn State's got a shot to get in. Drew Aller back at quarterback. The knock on James Franklin has certainly been, not being able to get over the hump and beat Michigan or Ohio State, but he always wins 10 games. And if you win 10 games this year, you're probably in the top 12. You can probably make the playoffs. So I think Penn State's got a good shot, especially if Michigan's fading. And then you look around the Big 12, it's going to obviously be different with no Oklahoma and no Texas, but it is a deep league. I kind of think that, it might be only one team in the college football playoff out of the Big 12. You just look at Kansas State, still hell of a program, as they always are. They should have a shot. I think they will be one of the favorites. Oklahoma State, Ollie Gordon could have a shot at the Heisman Trophy. Mike Gundy coming out pretty wild talk recently, almost getting Ollie Gordon got a DUI, and they asked if they were going to suspend him. He's like, I'll probably just give him more carries. And that was a crazy statement from Gundy when he talked about the fact that he basically admitted he drank and drive a lot in his younger days, which I couldn't believe he necessarily did that. Curious, like Houston, Willie Fritz is going to be a rebuild a little bit, but I think he could build something at Tulane after what he did at Tulane, getting Tulane to the American Athletic Conference Championship. And, Houston's got unlimited NIL money, so I think that's a spot where he could really build. But having said that, I don't think it's going to necessarily happen in year one. We had S.J. Tui on last week. Central Florida under Gus Malzahn could have a hell of a year. They took K.J. Jefferson, the Arkansas transfer, and I think KJ could have a big year for Central Florida. Could they win 8-9 games? But looking forward to seeing how they do in the Big 12 this year. And then a lot of talk too. I want to touch on the ACC right now because they added SMU, Cal, and Stanford, which feels weird. SMU could be pretty damn good though. Rhett Lashley winning the American Athletic Conference Championship. They got a stud quarterback in Preston Stone, and they've also got big NIL money, being a private school in Texas. And because of that, I think they're in a spot maybe to do well. A lot of talk about Florida State and Clemson. What's their future in that conference? I think they're going to stay. It sounds like the SEC doesn't want them. But Florida State was not very happy that SMU and them got in there in the league last year. And I think Florida State's just got to be bitter after last year, going undefeated and not being able to make not even being able to get in the playoff after Jordan Travis got hurt. And I don't know. It's going to be curious. I'm curious. They took DJ Uiagalelei, the former Clemson and Oregon State quarterback, was as their transfer quarterback this year. They lost multiple defensive linemen to the NFL. I feel like they may be facing a little bit of a rebuild. I mean, they still should be one of the best teams. But that ACC is a little more open this year. Clemson, can Cade Klubnik take a step forward for Dabo this year? And then you look at the Miami Hurricanes and Mario Cristobal. I still can't believe he didn't kneel the ball in that Georgia Tech game last year. But they're interesting because they took Cam Ward from Washington State. And Cam Ward, maybe a name people don't know as much, but he lit up college football at Washington State, put up big numbers. So I'm curious to see how he does in Miami. Miami quarterback Tyler Van Dyke from last year is now at Wisconsin playing for Luke Fickell. And, I've been studying all the rosters. The transfer quarterback thing is crazy. I mean, it's nuts to see, where some of these guys end up and land. But, the Miami Hurricanes open at Florida. That's a super interesting game in week one. Miami, 2.5-point favorite. I saw Brandon Walker already on Florida as a home dog in that football game. That's one of the best week one matchups. One of the ones I'm looking the most forward to. But I'm just ready to get this damn season started. It's kind of one of those that can't start soon enough. Just all the hype on it. I think the 12-team college football thing is going to – I think it's going to just almost revolutionize the sport. I really think that, I know there's a lot of people that like purists like bowl games, but the bowl game thing the last few years has just gotten so weird because – of the transfer portal. And at the end of the regular season, all these guys are trying to figure out where they're going. Basically, before bowl games, people are opting out and stuff. But now that with the 12-team playoff, I think it's going to just – I think it's just more games that super matter. And then you look at the season, you can lose one or two games, and it doesn't necessarily kill you, which I think is great. And then just the 5 through 8 seeds, getting to host games on their campus is such a huge thing. I think that's going to be massive for college football. And I feel like the 1 through 4 seeds are going to be kind of jealous. They're going to get buys, but they're going to be mad that they don't get to host home games. And I hope, going forward, the future college football, they move those quarterfinal games to campus too. But right now, because it's going to be hard for fans to travel 3 times around the country over the holidays. But, that's a first world problem if your team's there. I also want to mention what Notre Dame, one of the favorites to get to the college football playoff this year as well under Marcus Freeman. They took Riley Leonard, the quarterback from Duke. Week one, Notre Dame at Texas A&M, to me, the most interesting matchup. Mike Elko was the Duke coach last year, and now he's at Texas A&M coaching against his former quarterback in Riley Leonard. A&M a 1-point favorite in that game currently on DraftKings. And I feel like A&M, I kind of just talked a lot about the SEC earlier, but didn't mention A&M. A&M could be pretty damn good this year. I like their quarterback, Connor Wegman, a good bit, and it just felt like there was a stench at the end of the Jimbo Fisher era for Texas A&M, and because of that, I feel like there's a new energy with Elko. And Elko was the defensive coordinator at A&M when they won the Orange Bowl in the COVID year, only losing 1 game. He's really familiar with A&M. That was a crazy hiring process. A lot of people thought A&M was going to hire Mark Stoops. There was like almost a revolt from the Texas A&M fans, and they ended up going with Elko, a guy they know. But, that roster did lose some guys to the transfer portal, but still extremely talented. Because the thing with Jimbo, they recruited really well because A&M's got all that oil money and IL money, but I think Elko may be able to get more out of that talent than Jimbo. And people are kind of sleeping on A&M this year too. You hear everybody's talking about Ole Miss and Bama and LSU and Georgia and Texas, but A&M I think could be like an 8 or 9 win team. I think they're one of the sleepers in the SEC. We'll talk a little bit about the LSU Tigers. Brian Kelly, it's kind of a fascinating deal because they've won 10 games both his first 2 years. They won the SEC West 2 years ago, even though they got blown out by Georgia in the SEC Championship. Last year, Jaden Daniels winning the Heisman Trophy. But there's some kind of – the LSU stuff is interesting, kind of fascinating to me. They're killing recruiting for 2025. They got the number one recruiting class. All the guys are going to be seniors in high school. They got the number one quarterback, number one running back, number one receiver, number one offensive tackle. I mean, it's crazy how much talent they have in that recruiting class. But the thing about LSU this year, some stuff going in. They've got Garrett Nussmeier, quarterback. He can sling it. He's already kind of proven that in his time. Won a bowl game last year, chunked it for over 400 yards against Wisconsin. He slung it in the second half against Georgia in the SEC championship 2 years ago. Passing game should be good, but they're losing Jaden Daniels' rushing ability. LSU does have probably the top offensive line in college football, led by left tackle Will Campbell, shout out Monroe, Louisiana, where I'm from, and Emory Jones, the right tackle, also a Monroe guy. They actually both went to Neville in Monroe. And although they lost 2 first-round receivers in Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors, the LSU receiving corps is still loaded. Kyron Lacey, the number 3, should step up as the number 1. Chris Hilton, the super speedster. They got depth there. So I think LSU's offense, which was historically good last year, it was number 1. I think they're still going to be top 10, top 15. And the offense should be fine. Joe Sloan, former quarterback coach, promoted to co-offensive coordinator. I like that move. I'm big boys Joe. I'm excited to see him get his due, especially after the job he did as quarterback coach for Jaden Daniels. But the thing with LSU, they made a big defensive coordinator hire, getting Blake Baker from Missouri, who tore it up last year. And I think the defensive coaching staff improved a ton. They brought in Corey Raymond, former Florida. He was the LSU defensive backs coach for Honey Badger and Patrick Peterson and all the first-rounders and second-rounders they sent for years. So I think bringing him back's big. It's already paying off in recruiting. They got Bo Davis, really good defensive line coach. So the defensive coaching staff's upgraded, but I have big questions about the personnel. Harold Perkins is a stud pass rusher, but the rest of it, they lost 3 defensive linemen to the NFL draft, and the secondary kind of looks like a mess. And last year, LSU was 110th on defense. This year, can they get to top 50, top 60? I think I'm very bullish on the long run of the LSU program, but this year I have some questions about their defense. So I think you look at LSU goes from number 1 offense to a top 10, top 15 one, and if the defense goes from 110 to 60, I think you're looking at an 8-4 or 9-3 year. I just don't think they have enough defensive talent. They didn't do as well in the transfer portal as I would expect LSU to do, and they kind of have a tougher schedule too. One of the most exciting week 1 games, LSU opening with USC in Vegas. LSU a 6-point favorite on DraftKings. LSU's lost their last 4 season openers. And, going back to Mississippi State game and COVID, losing to Florida State 2 years and also at UCLA. And can they get that monkey off their back week 1? I'm curious about that. They play UCLA at home non-conference before the SEC schedule picks up. They got Ole Miss and Bama and Oklahoma all at home. But, I think they're going to be good. I definitely think LSU will be good this year. I just don't know that they're going to be great because the defensive personnel is kind of a little – not maybe what you'd expect for them. But the SEC, loaded as always. I've got a blog coming out today about an Auburn preview. What are they going to be like in year 2 under Hugh Freeze? I kind of mentioned that earlier. I just was so surprised that they didn't get another quarterback to replace Peyton Thorne. But then when I looked deeper into Auburn last year, their offensive line stunk. They had no receivers. All they had was a good tight end. They upgraded their receiving core. The offensive line looks a lot better. So they surrounded Peyton Thorne with more talent. They had 5 NFL draft picks on their defense. They got so they're going to be rebuilding on defense a little bit. But with DJ Durkin there, I think the defense should still be fine. I still think Auburn's 1 year away, though, to be honest. I think 2025 is going to be the year. You see, is the Auburn all-in under Hugh Freeze going to happen? And then you can't forget about Missouri in the SEC. You kind of always naturally kind of don't think about Missouri as much as an SEC team. But, man, last year, beat Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. Brady Cook at quarterback is elite. They've got one of the top receivers in college football, and their offense should be excellent. The question about them this year is they lost a ton on defense, especially off their defensive line. They've got a new defensive coordinator, losing Baker to LSU. They hired the South Alabama defensive coordinator. So I think they're going to take a step back on defense, but Missouri has one of the most favorable schedules. I think there's a path. They're kind of getting forgotten about when talking about possible playoff teams from the SEC. But when you look at Missouri, their schedule it sets up extremely favorably. So they only have they play Oklahoma, they play Bama, and they play A&M, but they don't play Georgia this year. They don't play Ole Miss. They don't play LSU. So I think it's kind of set up where you could see Missouri possibly, get to the college football playoff. So when you look at the SEC, I think, possible playoff teams, Georgia, Texas, Bama, Missouri, LSU, and Ole Miss. I mean, all those teams aren't going to make it. I don't think LSU is quite going to make it, but I think Georgia will. I feel good about Ole Miss making it. I mean, even at 9.5, and everybody's going to call me a homer and all that, but whatever. I mean, you look at the Ole Miss schedule, they're only an underdog in 2 games right now, and that's at LSU and at home against Georgia. It's always tough. The hardest thing in college football is to win on the road in the SEC, but at Florida, at South Carolina, at Arkansas, all winnable road games, even though Ole Miss never wins at Fayetteville ever. But I don't know. I just feel really good about it. You got Oklahoma at home. I think they can win that game too. So if you get 10-2 at Ole Miss, I think you're making the playoffs. And the thing about the Ole Miss this year is just them beefing up the trenches is the biggest thing. As I mentioned, getting Walter Nolan, the number 1 player in the portal at defensive tackle, to go with J.J. Pegues and Jared Ivey on that front, and Suntarine Perkins, who flashed a ton as a freshman playmaker. They moved him to the D-line. He's going to be coming off the edge all year. I think the defensive line is going to carry them on defense, and Pete Golding, defensive coordinator, did a damn good job last year. I mean, Ole Miss ended up in the top 25 in defense, and I think they're looking to make even more of a step this year. So, man, just love it just talking college football. It is what it is, man. I mean, we're dog days of summer right now, and I'm just getting in the spirit of this thing. I mean, I'm so freaking pumped about this season. It can't come soon enough. And then also, we're getting to the point where it's kind of time to start getting ready for NFL as well. And when C.D. Lamb didn't report to Dallas camp. There's a lot of contract stuff and posturing going on. Jordan Love is at Green Bay camp and not practicing. They're saying Jordan Love at Green Bay is about to get the biggest deal in NFL history, which is wild to me. And I know the quarterback contracts continue to reset the market. That's just how it is. But they're saying Jordan Love could get $55 million a year. He had a bad first half of the season last year before he kind of grasped the offense, and then he was awesome the second half. But you're talking about a guy it's about to get the biggest quarterback contract in NFL history, off a good half of a season. I mean, I get that Green Bay evaluated him and he sat behind Rodgers, but damn, I mean, that's crazy to me that he's going to be able to get that big of a contract. I'm also getting excited about fantasy football. Check out DraftKings for their daily fantasy stuff all year. We're going to be doing a lot of features with that. Looking forward to getting the fantasy football content cranked back up. And I've kind of started doing some research on that front too. And a few guys I really like this year, kind of looking at going deep on that. I love Dalton Kincaid for the Bills. Now that Stephon Diggs is gone, I think Kincaid, the tight end, could be their number 1 pass catcher. He's a guy I've super identified as guys I want in drafts. Some other sleepers I'm kind of looking at. Ladd McConkey, the receiver for the Chargers. The Chargers are now being taken over by Jim Harbaugh. I think the Chargers could take a big step forward. They're one of my sleepers in the NFL this year. Their current win total, only 8.5. Their coaching staff's just been utter trash for years. Didn't like Brandon Staley, didn't like Anthony Lynn. But now with Jim Harbaugh calling plays and being there, I think that's just such a massive upgrade. They're going to be extremely physical. You're going to see a different kind of identity. He brought a stud defensive coordinator from Michigan with him. Their receiving core is going to be interesting, which is why I like McConkey so much, with Keenan Allen playing for the Bears and Mike Williams playing for the Jets, and Quentin Johnson, their first-round pick from TCU right now, currently the number 4 receiver on their roster. He was a huge bust in year 1. They're going to make him earn it. But McConkey, a guy I'm looking at pretty closely. Looking around the rest of the NFL, some other stuff, I've kind of been working on the preview stuff for that. I like the Bengals a lot this year, and Joe Burrow certainly showed up with a crazy haircut to camp yesterday. He was looking like Slim Shady, but I don't know. I feel like people are forgetting about Burrow a little. He was on Pardon My Take with Big Cat a couple of weeks ago, and he was hurt last year. But, Burrow and Cincy have been the only team that's proven they can beat Kansas City in the playoffs, doing it a couple of years ago, and they've had some success against Mahomes. Maybe a weird sign from the universe, but the Super Bowl being in New Orleans 5 years after Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase won the national championship there, I feel like that's like a sign maybe they're going to do it. One other guy to look out for, you never can count out KC. KC's at the point, the Chiefs at the point under Mahomes where the season starts in the AFC Championship game. He's made the AFC Championship game all 6 seasons there, winning 3 of the last 4 Super Bowls. And when you look at their team this year, there's been a lot of off-field drama. Will that kind of affect them? We'll see. Xavier Worthy, the first-round pick from Texas, can fly. There was a very viral highlight of him catching a bomb touchdown in camp on a scramble play from Mahomes the other day. He's a guy to look out for because they've been kind of trying to replace Tyreek Hill the last couple of years. Last year, really had a bad receiving core and still somehow were able to win the title behind their defense and Mahomes. But I think Xavier Worthy could give them a lot this year, and I'm kind of curious to see how he fits in that offense. The AFC North is going to be the toughest division of football. I just mentioned the Bengals already, but the Ravens adding Derrick Henry. I mean, everybody keeps saying, is Derrick Henry done? I don't know if he's done, and I think he's a great fit in that Baltimore offense with Lamar Jackson's ability to run the ball. Lamar coming off an MVP season, obviously a disastrous performance in the AFC Championship game, but the Ravens are still extremely loaded. And then you look at the rest of that division with the Browns and the Steelers. I don't know about the Russell Wilson-Pittsburgh thing. I feel like he's the perfect quarterback for those ugly Steelers 13-9 games in the fourth. But you never want to count out Tomlin. They always have winning records no matter what. And they've got a hell of a defense. And then the Cleveland Browns made the playoffs last year behind Joe Flacco. Can Deshaun Watson stay healthy this year is my biggest question about them. And he obviously had a bad exit from Houston, and last year was banged, kind of played a little bit 2 years ago, but was extremely rusty after a lot of time outside of football. Last year was banged up a lot in the year, but, looking to see if he could have a bounce-back year. And I still have some questions. He's got a lot to prove in Cleveland, that's for sure. Nick Chubb had such a terrible knee injury last year on Monday Night Football in Week 1, but he's back squatting 1,000,000 pounds. Looks like he should be back to health and should be solid for this season. And Cleveland with that loaded defensive line behind Myles Garrett, AFC North, there's a chance that every single team has like a 500 or better record in that division. When you look at the AFC East, that's kind of in flux this year. Can Aaron Rodgers stay healthy for the New York Jets? I feel like there's a lot of media smoke around the Jets. It's like dysfunction, as there always is in New York. But I'm kind of curious, is Rodgers all in? He's been on all these he was on Pardon My Take and trolling Big Cat a little bit, even still after he's not in Green Bay, still trolling him about Green Bay owning the Bears. But the Jets have a lot of talent. Breece Hall going to be one of the top running backs in fantasy football this year. Don't forget about Garrett Wilson, who's a stud receiver that was just dealing with bad quarterback play the last 2 years. I think he could break out. And they do have a solid defense, and so they've got a shot in that division. That division, I feel like Buffalo going into this year could be taking a step back. It kind of feels like maybe they missed their window because of the Chiefs and Mahomes just couldn't get over the hump and beat them in the playoffs. Josh Allen's still elite, but Stephon Diggs now in Houston. That receiving core for the Bills looking a little weird. Keon Coleman going to have to step up as a rookie out of Florida State. He's got great size, but they're going to be asking a lot from him in year one, and hence me mentioning Dalton Kincaid. I think he could have a big year. And then James Cook finished 4th in the NFL in rushing with over 1,100 yards last year. He could be a huge factor this year, kind of building off that second half. The New England Patriots are going to struggle. There's no denying it. First year post Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo taking over. They're saying Jacoby Brissett, the most NFL-ready quarterback. They took Drake May, 3rd overall pick. I'm curious to see what they're going to do. I feel like Brissett will start the first few games, and we'll see May a little more on the back end of the season. And then you look at Miami, just had a ton of injuries down the stretch, but with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Mike McDaniel calling plays, I feel like they got to be the favorite in the AFC East. Just hopefully they can stay a little more healthy down the stretch than they were able to last year. Take a look around the NFC. It feels like the Cowboys might have a little bit of a regression year. I mentioned CeeDee Lamb not reporting for camp. He's holding out. He's scheduled to make $18 million this year, but he wants a big contract, and rightfully so after how dominant he was last year. The Cowboys still, Trevion Diggs, the stud corner who was hurt, tore his ACL last year. He's still on the PUP list. They replaced Dan Quinn, their defensive coordinator, is now the head coach of the Washington Commanders. Mike Zimmer taking over, though. Should be good. I think Zimmer will do a good job with that defense. I've always been a fan of his. But I don't know. It just feels kind of weird. It feels like Dallas might take a little step back this year. in that division. The Philadelphia Eagles are actually the favorite at even money. Dallas plus 150 on DraftKings to win that division. The Eagles collapsed down the stretch last year. I mean, they started like 9 or 10-1 after they won that Monday night game at KC, and then they just melted down the stretch. Some changes there on both coordinators. I hired Kellen Moore, who I don't like, former Cowboys and Chargers offensive coordinator. I didn't love that hire, to be honest, but I did like the Vic Fangio defensive coordinator hire. I think he'll do a damn good job. The question on their defense is, can their secondary play better because it melted down the stretch? How will Kellen Moore use Jalen Hurts is a big question to me. When you look at Jalen Hurts, he's really good running and rolling outside the pocket, but Kellen Moore, I thought, when he was in Dallas, dropped Dak back in the shotgun too much, and I hope he uses Jalen Hurts' skill set properly because the talent level in Philly, I mean, with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and all those guys, they're still extremely loaded. We're looking around the rest of the NFC real quick. The NFC North, look, I'm in Chicago. The Bears hype is crazy. It's a real thing. Caleb Williams, his first year starting, and they surrounded him with so much talent. I mean, taking a Dunze, top 10 pick out of Washington, stud receiver. Love the Keenan Allen pickup from the Chargers. DJ Moore, I've always felt like it's a solid number one receiver in the NFL. He's just played with a lot of dog crap quarterbacks for years. They signed DeAndre Swift. Their offensive line's improved. There's real enthusiasm in Chicago, and I'm kind of just can't wait to see what that offense looks like. The Detroit Lions, are America's darling. There's more money bet right now on Detroit to win the Super Bowl, I believe, than any other team. I saw on DraftKings. Can they back up that? Can they recover from blowing that NFC Championship game, that 17-point lead they blew at San Francisco? They gave Jared Goff a big deal. Look, they got an elite offensive line, really good run-stopping defensive unit. Their pass defense was terrible last year, but they did, spend a lot on their secondary, drafting Terry and Arnold, bringing in Amik Robertson. So if their secondary can improve, you got to love Dan Campbell. They're kind of one of America's teams. And then you can't forget about the Green Bay Packers. As I mentioned, Jordan Love about to get $55 million a year. It's going to be weird seeing Aaron Jones carrying the ball for the Minnesota Vikings. Josh Jacobs, actually, now the Green Bay Packers running back. They signed him from the Raiders. He could, hopefully if he stays healthy, he could have a big bounce back year. He, 2 years ago, led the NFL in rushing for the Raiders. And then last year, ultimately just kind of had an injury-prone season. But I'm curious. And then the Minnesota Vikings, you look at J.J. McCarthy starting from Michigan, won a national championship. People are all over the map on him. But he won in college. He's mobile. He's clearly a winner. Can he keep Justin Jefferson's stats up? Minnesota kind of being picked. It's weird to see people sleeping on them so much, but they're kind of picked to finish last in that division. When you look at the NFC South this year, Kirk Cousins in Atlanta is going to be fascinating to follow. Can he stay healthy off the Achilles? So much was made of them taking Michael Penix 8th overall. So if Cousins does go down, at least they've got a ready-made replacement. Their quarterback play has been terrible the last few years, so Cousins should give them a huge, huge upgrade. They do have talent, though. The last few years, Drake London, Bijan Robinson, and Kyle Pitts all drafted first round with top 10 picks. So maybe can they make the most out of those guys? And Raheem Morris's first year in Atlanta. A lot of people are on Atlanta to win that division. I feel like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers should be really good. Or not really good, but solid. Baker Mayfield broke back out last year. They played well down the stretch, destroying the Eagles in a playoff game. Certainly competed at Detroit in the second round, and kind of feels like nobody's really giving them as much credit. Carolina's going to suck again. People are hoping for a Bryce Young bounce-back year. I'm not necessarily seeing that at all. I just think they're a mess, and I don't think he's a good pro quarterback. And the Saints season is going to come down to Clint Kubiak. The new offensive coordinator was hired from San Francisco. He was a passing game coordinator under Shanahan. His dad, Gary Kubiak, I love his coaching pedigree, but he's going to have to scheme it up for the Saints because I still have a ton of questions about Derek Carr and that offensive line. Good news for the Saints, though, Alvin Kamara did report to camp. There was a lot of contract talk about him, and they kept Marshawn Lattimore on defense, and a lot of people thought he was going to leave this offseason. There was a lot of rumors on that, and the defense should be really good for the Saints again, led by Cam Jordan and DeMario Davis and the Honey Badger. Those guys are, even though they're getting older, still extremely good. But the favorite in the NFC, no doubt, the San Francisco 49ers. They've done everything but win a Super Bowl. Kyle Shanahan, one of the best, probably the best play caller in the NFL. One thing to watch on them is Brandon Ayuk asking for a trade. Are they going to be able to get a contract work out with him? What's going to happen with him? But they still have Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. tons of weapons, and they drafted Ricky Pearsall at the end of the first round out of Florida, and I feel like he's going to be a hell of a fit in that Shanahan offense. I mean, Kyle Shanahan always gets the best out of his guys. And then, you look at the rest of the West, Matt Stafford, they got their he had some contract stuff, but they figured it out. The Rams made the playoffs last year. Curious what their defense is going to look like without Aaron Donald. He's been the best defensive tackle in pro football for like a decade. I feel like their defense is fading, but their offense should be extremely good still, especially with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp at receiver and Stafford. You never want to count out Sean McVay offenses, so they should be. I still think they should be pretty damn solid. I wouldn't count them out. I feel like they have a good shot to get a wild card. Seattle, new era, no Pete Carroll, finally gone after being so successful so long. But I like the Montgomery hire. They hired the Ravens defensive coordinator. Can he turn that defense around? They've certainly still got a lot of weapons in offense with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Look out for Jackson JSN. He could break out big in his second year, flashed a little bit, but I kind of think he's a solid fantasy football sleeper. And then Arizona, they're certainly not elite or anything, but they fought hard down the stretch after Kyler Murray came back. I thought Jonathan Gannon did a decent job his first year, the former Eagles defensive coordinator. And, I don't think they're going to be like a playoff team or anything, but they're going to certainly be feisty. As far as futures bets in the NFL, I'm looking at the Bengals 13-1 to win the Super Bowl. As I said, I'm big on Burrow and Chase. And I don't know, they feel like they're kind of one of those teams. I just trust Joe Burrow in playoff games. If he gets in there, I feel like he can get him to the Super Bowl. Can he stay healthy all this year? He certainly had a bunch of injuries in his NFL career going back to his rookie year when he tore his ACL. But, man, when he's been healthy, I mean, they almost won the Super Bowl losing to the Rams a couple of years ago, and then they barely lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. So I'm kind of, looking at them. Looking around the league, like I said, I like the LA Chargers a lot, over 8.5. I think they're going to make the playoffs in year one under Harbaugh. So those are kind of the teams I'm looking at. But, dude, I just get on here solo talking football for 45 minutes. I mean, it just shows you how excited I am about football. Can't wait to get the fantasy going. As always, we love DraftKings. We're DraftKings partners here at Barstool. And, just check that out. Can't wait to get the daily fantasy going. Just super excited about everything. There's too much to be pumped about with football season coming. Obviously y'all see how excited I am about the Ole Miss thing and the college football 12-team playoff. NFL is going to be here soon. And, I mean, it's going to be a great football season. And let's get this crap rolling, boys. Hell yeah. Can't wait. But as always, shout out Tyler Moody holding down the fort. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. We couldn't hear Walker on his end earlier, but love coming in here, talking some football, get excited for the season. Tonight, don't forget, join us at Barstool River North for the Rat Race premiere. It's Chris Clemmer's Rat Race. It's going to come out tomorrow at 9 a.m. We've got a meet and greet, bunch of people coming tonight. Brandon Walker, Megan, Nick Traney, myself, White Sox Dave. They're all part of the Rat Race Chicago. Shout out Chris Clemmer and the production team. I think it's going to be an amazing project, and can't wait to see the debut of that tomorrow. Join us at Stool River North tonight. Tomorrow we don't have Wake Up Mintzy because we've got a huge office thing. We're taping a big commercial that all hands are on deck for. It's going to be a lot of fun. Can't wait to see what comes out of that, but should be a good time. As always, shout out Tyler Moody holding the fort down in Louisiana. And let's get out of here. Let's have a hell of a day. Hope to see all the Stoolies tonight at Stool River North for the Rat Race premiere.